And yet in spite of this, threads are full of people who think the sky is falling and Chevy is stopping production. What is up, YouTube? Welcome to Fred's Full Throttle. Holy bananas, Foster. I thought last week was pretty full of news. It turns out this week has even more, though at least this week there's a bit of a better balance between good news and bad news for the C8 Z06. In today's video, we're going to cover all of the news. I'm going to share some thoughts about what's going on, and then one really important clarification about some of the news which many people seemingly have either missed or gotten wrong. Real quickly, before we get underway, I wanted to share a few quick things. First, for those that have been asking, I've been using my new Yamaha Jet Blaster a lot, having racked up about 45 hours or so on it so far this year. I've been riding out on the ocean a lot, and this past weekend I spent several hours over both days exploring the coast of southern Maine. The Wave Runner has really been a blast and a wonderful escape from the world for me. Here's a quick glimpse of the ocean from last Sunday when I was about 2.5 miles offshore. I killed the engine, and it was amazing having no noise pollution and being the only person I could see for as far as I could see. 2.5 miles offshore. Beautiful. And secondly, I wanted to highlight that in 2 of my last handful of videos, I've included some clues about changes in my garage and vehicles that I've been selling. Credit goes to Shane Rick, who's here on the sign, who was the first person to notice and pick up on some of these clues. Now first, I'll say that I've sold 2 vehicles in the past month, and that the clues were specifically related to both of those vehicles. Next, both vehicles were sold to make room for their respective replacements. Still drawing a blank, not sure about the clues. Going back to my E-Ray video, the clue was right behind the whiteboard, right here. It was the timing belt and the front brake disc for my Ducati Street Fighter. That bike sold earlier that week. Going back to my video last week, notice that there was a pile of items right next to my whiteboard, conspicuously placed so you might see it. Those are the tie-downs for my Toyota Tacoma. Last week, on Thursday, I sold my beloved 15-year-old Tacoma. Never fear, I replaced it with something new, something amazing, which I've actually been driving for the last 6 days. I'll be unveiling it soon to the channel, but if you pay close attention to this video, you may just learn what it is before I unveil it. And no, I'm not going to put the clue in the same spot as I did last time. Anyway, we've got a lot to go over on the Z06, so join me and let's dive right in. Alright, up first, this past week, BGA Director Kai Spond gave an annual plant update. That in itself isn't particularly remarkable. However, one of the slides from the presentation was pretty interesting. He was talking about the production volumes and their relative complexity and highlighted how different builds of the C8 are faster or slower to be assembled. Because of this, in order to maximize efficiency and prevent stopping the production line, he shared a slide that talks through the elaborate shuffling and ordering of cars and the things they need to do in order to keep things flowing. I'm not going to read through all these aloud, but it's interesting to note that the Z06 takes more time than a Stingray, which honestly isn't really a shock, that right-hand drive cars are batched together, and that Z07 cars can only be at most 2 of the 11.6 cars per hour that they can manufacture. I appreciate Kai's transparency here, and hopefully this helps address some of people's curiosity around why can't they just make a million Z06s? When people ask questions like that, they tend to be laser focused, zoomed right in on a very specific point, when clearly there's a much larger picture that each build is a part of. Really cool stuff. I thought this was awesome. Up next, first reported by John over at Mid-Engine Corvette Forum, he confirmed that next April, the Z06 Owners School will be ramping up for the C8. For those who aren't familiar, when you buy a new Corvette, you are offered a significantly discounted rate to go and visit the Ron Fellows Driving School at Spring Mountain Raceway and spend 2 days learning how to operate your car to its potential. The price is $1,000 plus travel, which includes lodging on site at the facility. It's something I didn't do when I bought my C7, and I definitely will be doing it when I get my C8. That's my one regret with my current car, is that I had the opportunity and I didn't take it. Having now done several driving schools and taking some high-performance driving classes since buying my car, I can completely vouch that this is an experience you'll remember for the rest of your life. Even if you aren't a track person, and even if this doesn't necessarily sound like the way that you'll be enjoying your car, it's going to give you a lot better understanding of the capabilities, so I highly recommend it. Alright, at the end of last week, my emails started blowing up, with people letting me know about this next story. This is the news that GM is stopping all further Z06 allocations for the remainder of the 2023 production run. Sure enough, I booted up YouTube and was barraged by a number of fairly aggressive, clickbaity, sky is falling type titles and thumbnails from other channels, and immediately I knew what I was in for. The initial headline sounded pretty scary. However, after about a minute of reading John's detailed and balanced explanation of this, it turned out to be nothing to be alarmed at, and at most, just an interesting development. Now, part of that is that there are a few key pieces of information about this which are really important to have. First, this means that new allocations are stopped. Nothing else. The car isn't being discontinued, production isn't stopping. And this isn't a sign of the four horsemen of the apocalypse, who, incidentally in my research, I found out drive Dodge Hellcats. Who knew? One of the things I saw immediately accompanying pretty much every article or post about this on social media were about a dozen or more people piling on that Chevy isn't going to make any more 2023 Z06s. Now, I can't possibly stress this enough. Has everyone, or nearly everyone, lost their critical reading skills? The articles literally say allocation, not production. And yet, in spite of this, threads are full of people who think the sky is falling and Chevy is stopping production. Next, there are over 1,000 C8 Z06 allocations already allocated. With roughly 75 business days between now and the end of the year, that means that Chevy needs to build on average between 13 and 14 Z06s per day from now through the end of the year in order to build what's already been allocated. This means that production is going to be in full swing from September 12th through the end of the year. Also, this has happened before. There have been delays, there have been halts to production across many of the generations of Corvettes, as recently as the C8 itself, for worker strikes, a COVID-related stop order, and so on. This is not a bad omen, this is not the end of times, it's literally just a temporary setback, nothing more. Also, most of us with reservations statistically weren't going to get a 2023 car. With 2023 already being a short year for the car, even if Chevy doubled allocations, most of us weren't going to get one of those cars anyway, so it doesn't move the needle much one way or the other. I do imagine some low reservation holders are bummed, I would be too, but bummed is about as far as I'd go because of my next point. And that's that 2024 is less than 4 months away, and with that comes allocations. Lest we forget, GM doesn't make a dime from dealers sitting on our reservation money, so it's in GM's best interest to get allocating as soon as is feasible. The cited reasons they want a slower ramp up on the car are that they want the car to exceed expectations in every measure, and they want to get it right. Rushing things early on benefits no one. Would you rather have a car that they took their time and mastered, or an early run, hastily assembled car? I rest my case. Finally, as several have pointed out, this also eases pressure on the supply lines and gives GM time to sort out supply issues and constraints, which I'm sure they want to be doing. 4 months is enough time for them to likely sort out some of this stuff, get their carbon fiber suppliers in line, or add additional ones, and smooth out rough edges in the production process. As anyone who's lived through the last 2 or 3 years can likely see, there is a tremendous amount of complexity to making anything in this world happen, and many of us were probably taking for granted how smoothly it all worked prior to COVID. Things will get better over time. The world is recovering. But don't set unrealistic expectations, and just as importantly, when you read something, take some time to think for a minute before reacting. And make sure you read it right to begin with. It's all going to be okay and work out. Really. I also want to take a quick moment to credit John and a few other level heads over at Mid-Engine Corvette Forum for doing their best to tamp down the misinformation and keep the conversations objective and factual over there. It's like drinking from the fire hose to keep up with it, but I applaud and appreciate the efforts John puts into keeping those forums clean, respectful, and informative. Lastly, I wanted to end with a fun bit of news. Keith over at Corvette Blogger posted some great pictures recently of the standard spoiler on the Z06 with the L2 aero extensions installed. These pictures are the first clear photos that I've seen of a car with the bigger extensions installed, and I think it looks fantastic. Much like the C7 Z06 and the Grand Sport, the standard spoiler on the C8 Z06 is comprised of 2 main pieces. The body of the spoiler, which in this case is painted bright yellow, and then the spoiler extensions, which some call a wicker bill or a ducktail or other similar things. These extensions are the black parts you see in these photos. Held in place on each side by 4 Torx screws, it's a simple exercise to install the taller spoilers. Now, one important note is that when you order the car with the standard spoiler, you get both the low extensions and the taller ones. Chevy made a point to call out that the lowest extensions are called the L3 spoiler extensions, The taller ones in these photos are L2, and L1 is actually the high wing spoiler from the Z07 or the high aero cars. Not sure why they reversed the standard order used in the past, but that's what they said. Though my heart was set on the high wing early on, as I worked through what I wanted for the options on my own build, I quickly pivoted to the standard spoiler. I love the L2 extensions on this spoiler, and definitely I'll be installing these the moment I get the car. Thanks, Keith, for the great photos and for covering what to many may not be that big of a detail, but for some of us who haven't had a chance to see it in person, it really was. Every time I see pictures or video of these cars, the better it looks. So that concludes my coverage for today. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, Fred out!